Nick's business is in the video production industry and he needs our help to decide how to grow his business and get the right people in place. He's deciding whether to recruit from universities, schools and colleges, or to pinch someone from a competitor. My favorite option in all this is to recruit from the university, because you can find some rough diamonds so you can shape and mold and make sure that they fit perfectly into your business.
My gut instinct is probably to recruit from universities. The reason I say this is he talked about culture quite a lot in his introduction, and people from universities, although they might have had a job before, will come with an open mind and fresh ideas, so he can educate them about his company's culture and train them into the company's way of doing things.
To some extent, A and C are very similar, universities and colleges. What you're getting is people full of enthusiasm, with perhaps some of the technical skills required, but without the worldly experience necessary to apply it effectively. You're also setting up a requirement for you to be able to train them, manage them, and control them. And that's one of the issues you need to think about.
There are issues with all of those, but I actually think that Nick should firstly understand what positions in his organisation does he need. There will be some that are absolutely client-facing and that will require a significant amount of industry knowledge. And so those roles obviously will have to come from what I would call experienced hires, so people with industry knowledge who know what they're talking about and who can impress the client and manage the client account from day one. When you're recruiting from competitors though, there is an ethical way of doing it and obviously a completely unethical way. And whilst it might be nice sometimes to go, hey, I got one over on the competition and I poached away their key member of staff, I think that says an awful lot about your organisation. So I think Nick would need to be really careful about how he approached people within other competitors.
I would probably not recruit from a competitor, because these usually comes with higher cost, as you have to headhunt them. And also, as Nick mentioned, he's a bit worried about culture differences between companies. And in this case, you kind of have to have a professional recruitment company to actually make sure that they fit into your organisation.
Recruiting from competitors, option B, means you can get experienced people. And whilst Nick may be on some level concerned about the fact that they may work in a different way, obviously if they come to work for his business, they will work in the way that Nick wants them to work. But he shouldn't be afraid of it, because actually people who work in different ways can bring a great deal of new thinking to the business, and perhaps there are actually better ways of doing it that Nick hasn't thought about. So I think the creation of a high performance team actually has two parts to it. Part one is creating the managers, the mentors, the people who can bring people on, and part B is bringing in people who are keen, enthusiastic and have the core skills to deliver.
He did have an option of recruiting from schools, which is a potential route. But I think the difference between school leavers and university leavers is they might not have quite as much maturity or experience of maybe meeting deadlines or working as a team.
When it comes to schools, I think they might be a little bit too young to kind of employ straight away. So I would, however, provide them with an internship or apprenticeship to make sure that they're right before I take any one of them on.
In terms of them recruiting from university and college, I love that. I love the fact that Nick would be bringing in people who are looking for a career, and he would be able to further them and help out his profession at the same time by training people up to be really valuable to his industry. What I would do though, and I also think that those individuals come with completely different ideas and a different set of values and a different perspective on technology and its use. So I think he'd be gaining something really valuable in terms of taking those two groups on, those from university and those straight from college. Where they're lacking though is in the business area and their understanding of business and the industry in particular and their clients' businesses. And so I would ensure that anybody that he was taking on as an experienced hire, or anybody he had in his business who already was very experienced, that they would be mentoring and that they had a mentoring program for the more junior members of staff, so that those more junior members of staff were learning their trade and learning their tradecraft properly.
I probably would go for a recruitment process that recruited some people from competitors who would go into more senior positions and manage teams of people, whilst recruiting from the university for the people to actually do the piece of work.